Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Yasu. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you for taking time. You are running a digital marketing agency in Japan. So today I want to ask you about your business and life in Japan.
Sure.
Yeah. At first, when did you come to Japan?
So I came to Japan in 2004 when I was working at Microsoft. I really had, how do I say, before then I had traveled to Japan many times and had traveled around the country on a Japan Rail Pass. And I just thought if I can come here and work for 2 or 3 years and get some really good experience, then I can go back home and continue working in my previous jobs. Of course, I was here in Japan for 2 to 3 years, and then 2 to 3 years became 5 years, and then 5 years became 10 years, and now it's 16 years here in Japan.
Oh, so you are already used to live in Japan.
Yeah, I haven't been arrested yet, so I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah, good. Before you came to Japan, you worked at Silicon Valley.
Yes, that's right.
And you worked at Microsoft.
Yeah, so actually I started at Apple right out of school. And there was a time where I used to be a developer on the Mac OS. And I worked at Apple for 9 years. And then I left Apple and I joined a small startup company. And then that startup company got bought by Microsoft. So that's how I switched from Apple to Microsoft.
I see. After that, you started working at Microsoft.
Yeah, I came to Microsoft Japan. I was in the MSN online group, so they're known at the time for products like Hotmail and Messenger and MSN.com.
I see.
Yeah.
Was it hard work to work in IT companies?
I think for my case it was a challenge. Let's see, I had a new job, right, and with new people. And I'm in Japan for the first time, and even though I had studied Japanese a little bit, I still struggled with the language. And I was in a group that was pretty much mostly Japanese. There wasn't a whole lot of foreigners in my particular group. So, I had to go to meetings where Japanese is spoken and try to understand and try to figure out how things are different, and then figure out like how to be successful. And to be honest, it took maybe 6 months, 6 to 9 months, I don't know, something like that, before I really felt like I was contributing in a positive way, right? Yeah. So it was a challenge at the time, but I'm glad I did it. It was just a fantastic experience.
Wow. Is there a difference of working style about the US companies to Japanese companies, like working hours? Something.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there's a big difference. Although I must say, like, I was working at Microsoft, which is, working at Microsoft Japan is kind of like a hybrid, right? It's not really a Japanese company, but it's not really a Silicon Valley company either, right? It's somewhere in between. So, it had like good aspects, of a high-tech company and, other things as well. But yeah, there are some differences. Let's see. I think people in Japan tend to work later hours, longer hours. I think, here in Japan, we were working a lot of times till 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then the equivalent same team, right? In the U.S., they'd all leave at like 5:30, to go home with their families. So, so there was some maybe cultural differences in the way, people spend their time, at work. But there's other differences as well. Trying to think of one thing. Here's a big one. Here's a big difference that you see, and you don't realize it right away, but you realize it over time, and that is the importance of relationships. So I've come to realize that the U.S. is a very task-oriented business culture. So they're very focused on getting the task done, right? On time, good performance, right, within budget. By comparison, I think Japanese business culture is much more focused on maintaining the relationship, and relationships are really, really key. Perhaps even more so than, say, like your company relationship, because I see this even in this high-tech world in Tokyo. People do bounce or move from company to company, but maintaining those relationships, as I've learned, is really, really important. And a lot of times, I think a lot of foreigners get frustrated, like, why are the Japanese doing it this way? And they don't realize that there's this whole other decision structure, thought process that's going around in the background. And a lot of the time, it's all because of relationships, and I think a lot of foreigners fail to see that or understand that.
Yeah, right. I understand. Because I was employee before. I worked at IT company. It's a Japanese company. So the connection relations are very important in the company. And I worked until midnight often. So working hours is very long.
Yes,
Japanese workers are dedicated.
Now, just to be clear, there have been times in my life where I've worked till midnight, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., in Silicon Valley. But when that happened, it was usually because we had a deadline. The whole team was working together. We had to ship a product. Silicon Valley, we got our very high task-oriented culture, right? Got to ship a product by this date. Everybody's waiting, and so that does happen. Don't get me wrong, and it does happen a lot. But it's, I guess, what's difference is in terms of accepted norms. There's some people in Japan where it's just normal for them to work till 10 o'clock every night to somehow prove to themselves or prove to others that they're, a valued employee or something. So I kind of wish it would stop, to be honest. I really wish if I could change things. I really wish more Japanese workers would just focus on quality, and then go home. All right, and do something else. Because your brain is only capable of a certain number of hours of extremely focused activity per day, right? That's covered in some books like The Brain. I think it's called Your Brain at Work. I think there's some other books as well. Your brain, your human brain, can only focus for a certain amount of time and stay hyper focused, and then after that, your productivity starts to decay, and it decays and it decays. There's no way, if you're working super hard starting at 9 a.m., that 10 p.m., 12, 13 hours later, you can say that you're working with the same productivity. Chances are you're not.
Yeah, right. There are many tired Japanese workers, and you can see them on the train every day.
Yeah, one thing that really surprised me too was sometimes it's accepted to like sleep in meetings in Japan. Never see that in the U.S. You probably get yourself fired or thrown out if you fell asleep in a meeting. You know, never see that. Never see that in the U.S. That was like really surprised. I think the first time I had it, I was giving a presentation. I came from the U.S. to Japan, and I'm giving a presentation to a room full of Japanese people, and a couple of them, like one or two of them, kind of fell asleep. I was just like, what's wrong with me? My presentation. They're falling asleep in my presentation. How can I make this better? And then I kind of realized later, oh yeah, that happens, you know, a lot.
I see.
Like, oh.
Yeah, right. And there are many meetings in Japanese companies.
Yeah, meetings is another big difference. I've seen this a lot. Even it's a little bit different, I think, with high-tech companies. You know, I worked at Microsoft. I also worked at Adobe in Japan, and even at Apple, I had business trips here. But yeah, especially Silicon Valley, you go into a meeting, and the result, what's going to happen in that meeting, you don't know. And a lot of times people go in and you talk, you debate, you argue, you explain your points, other people explain points, and then, you know, you arrive at a decision. With Japan, sort of the expected norm is that you have to reach out, you know, and do a little bit of like ne mawashi, if you know that phrase, right? You have to reach out person to person, kind of explain your point, get them to agree with you or disagree with you, understand their concerns. And then when you have the meeting, the point of the meeting is to basically get final confirmation. It's not always like that. I've seen some very big exceptions. But that's sort of the expected norm there. Yeah, so like when you go into a meeting in Japan, it's ideally it's like, okay, just confirm a few things, everybody nods, and then we've decided, okay, great, maybe we talk about some final issues. It's already basically the decision is already 90% decided when you go into the meeting. But like in my younger days at Apple, we have a bunch of, you know, young people in their 20s, very smart, very opinionated, very strong opinions. You know, I mean, it's like, I don't know how I can describe it, but, you know, it's like a boxing match or something. Everyone's, you know, arguing different things and explaining different things and different points of view. And yeah, so it's definitely, especially the way meetings are conducted, there's a big difference.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it was rare to discuss something in Japan. I think American companies are more practical and efficient. I think it's my image. After that, you started your own business. How did you start your business in the beginning?
Yeah, good question. So if you add up all the time, I worked both in Silicon Valley and in Japan. It was something like 25 years. And to be honest, I was tired of corporate life. You know, I worked for some good companies, right? But honestly, I was just tired of it. It doesn't suit my personality so well for various reasons. So even in my last job, I was thinking a lot about being an entrepreneur, you know, trying out some of my own ideas. And so, yeah, so I left my last corporate job in 2014. And I had read a lot of books. Lean Startup is a very good book to read. There's many other books about, you know, starting your own company and how to test your ideas, you know, how to get your first customer, that type of stuff. And so, following a lean startup, I started a company, and the concept was to sell digital marketing services to the group that I thought needed it most, which was not English teachers, music teachers and dance teachers, like music schools and dance schools, because their digital marketing is so awful. And they need clients, right? They need students. And so I had pretty much devised a low-cost lead generation type process for them to get students. And it didn't work. I learned how hard it is to get. It spent months and months and months to convince 4 dance studios to adopt this service, and it didn't bring me enough income, And so I realized maybe 9 months into it, 9 months I had 4 studios, and I just realized that the financial numbers weren't going to work. No matter how hard I tried, it was too much effort. It was too expensive on my side to acquire a customer. So I shut it down. So I started a company fast, and then a year later I shut it down. Which I think is like a really good learning lesson, to be able to start fast and then, see what it's like to get a few customers, and then fail fast. So
these customers are Japanese.
For this particular one, these were Americans actually. So even though I was in Japan, I had an online service that was targeting dance schools and music schools in the U.S. So that was part of the problem too. Is even though I was in Japan, I was still going to have to see people face to face or go to events and stuff like that. So that also made it hard. But I shut it down for a number of reasons. But I think the biggest reason was it just wasn't going to work financially. So, but at the same time, I was doing that. I started doing consulting on the side to help pay for what I was doing. So I started helping people with like their Google AdWords advertising, or Google Analytics, Facebook advertising, that type of stuff. So I got one customer, I got another customer, and I started getting more and more customers, and eventually incorporated, which is to what the agency is now. Now it's called Zo Digital Japan. So Zo, of course, means elephant in Japanese. So and now I have staff, I have people working for me. We have clients from around the world trying to bring their business into Japan. We also have foreign-friendly Japanese companies that want to appeal to a Japanese audience or a foreign audience, and that's what I do now. Just running this agency full time and keeping it.
I see. Wow. So it is your second company, you mean?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, you could say it's my second company.
I see. Wow.
The first one was a failure.
I see. Maybe.
If I can add one thing, that's a big interest. That's a big difference, I think, in Japanese culture versus like American culture, even Western culture. Is I think people respect you a lot, even if you start a company and it fails.
In the U.S.
In the U.S., yeah. But in Japan, if you say, "Oh, I started a company and it failed," and people are like, "Oh, it's they kind of treat you like you lost your wife or something. Somebody died in your family or something like that. Nobody wants to talk about it or anything." So I think another thing I wish I could change about Japanese culture is I often wish that, if they just embrace failure a little bit more often, that, people could be more successful.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is one of the big problems in Japan. Mistakes are evil in Japan, so they don't want to try new things so much.
Yeah. So I always see, mistakes or failures as big learning opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get to be old like me, you learn most from your failures or your mistakes. And so, I think a lot of Japanese people or, a lot of Japanese workers, they could do so much more if they're just willing to try and maybe accept that you might have to fail the first time, and then do a pivot somewhere else, and try that and maybe pivot a third time. But you'll never know unless you try, right? And so many people don't try, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, right. And you are doing digital marketing, and I think it is changing rapidly. For example, SEO, Google update its search engine often, and so you have to catch up the new technique or new method. So is it hard for you to catch up new technologies?
First of all, it takes time and effort to stay up to date with different techniques or technologies. But I come from a technical background, right? I used to be a software guy. So to me, it's interesting. It's what keeps me going, right? Is to learn like what are the new techniques, or what is Google and other search engines, like what are they doing, right, to make their algorithms better? And then how can we take advantage of that? So, to me, that's what drives me. That's what keeps me going. I mean, if I was in an industry that didn't change at all, I would be bored by now. I would have left a long time ago.
I see. Yeah, it's a big advantage for you because you are engineer before. In Japan, usual marketers don't have such technical knowledge so much. So
it's really hard to find that combination of not only understanding technology, but just understanding human behavior. Very few people can truly do that, truly understand both. But those that can are very, very valuable to society, and I'm sure will have very rewarding careers as a result.
Yeah. So now you are busy for working every day.
Yeah. And on the weekends too, unfortunately. But that's okay. I think there are times in my life where I've just worked 40 hours a week and stepped away from the computer, and I've been done. Lately, I am putting a lot of effort because I'm basically growing an agency, from nothing in 2015, 2014 to we have a list of clients, we have staff and lots of other things. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and so I'm actually putting a lot of time into it. But I think it's gonna pay off down the road or have more benefits, I think, over time.
Yeah, you are a hard worker. Will you continue to live in Japan in the future?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I have 2 kids, and Um, they have a Japanese mom, and so they speak Japanese, but I want them to speak English too. And so I speak English to them, and they speak English to me, and they speak Japanese to everybody else. But one of the things that's an advantage of working in this digital field is I don't have to be in Tokyo all the time. And so, yeah, I often take my kids back to California for a couple of weeks at a time, you know, and one, get them comfortable speaking English again, get them to understand, you know, get them to meet their relatives, like their grandmother, grandfather, their aunts and uncles and cousins, but more importantly, get them comfortable with American culture. So I often go back and forth, usually twice. When it's not COVID-19, it's usually twice a year that we go back and forth, and yeah, let them spend time there to just, if anything, get used to American culture again.
I see.
Yeah. So like long term, I'll probably stay here in Tokyo because the business is built up. We're an agency in Tokyo. We focus on Japanese related things. I can't really see myself living long term outside of Tokyo. And I like it here. I think it's just the area. It's just a great area to live and grow up. I'm happy with the environment that my kids have. I think it's a good, healthy environment. Yeah, and I hope to be here for another few years.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. I heard your stories. They are very valuable for my viewers, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope somebody gets some value out of my life.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your stories.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Thanks again for having me on. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you too. Okay. See you again. Bye.
Okay.